best tips for beginning educators. Learning is generally defined as relatively permanent changes in behavior, skills, knowledge, or attitudes resulting from identifiable psychological or social experiences. For teachers, learning usually refers to things that happen in school or within inside their classrooms, even though every teacher can, of course, describe learning that occurs outside of these environments. What does it mean to be a successful educator? Classroom management. Managing a learning environment is both a large responsibility and a big challenge for all educators, whether it's your first year or your last year. What can be done for managing classrooms? Monitor your, your class to see if any students need assistance with any worksheets, actively monitoring potential behaviors that may arise, building relationships with students in any way you can so that you can let them know that you can be a safe person, they can trust you, and come and talk to you if they ever need it. And try and check in with them emotionally and base interactions and consequences off that. Now, I have two stories about that later on. Learning focused environments. Easiest management problems to solve are the ones that do not have the first place. Have your classroom set up in a way that is effective, productive, safe, and warm. Have some posters, photos, or wall art on the walls to make the classroom more welcoming compared to just having blank walls. Have technology easily access for students to assist them in their learning and if they need to do research. And make your group reflect the students that are in there. You wouldn't want seniors in high school to be in a classroom like the one that's on the top left. You don't want third or fourth graders to be in a classroom that's like the picture on the right. There are many different teaching styles, but to be an effective educator, you need to be both warm and demanding. You don't want to have your children fear you or dislike you for being too strict. That's what we would call authoritarian, which is when demanding is on, but your warmth is off. You don't want to be in a classroom with no structure and the educator will not give appropriate consequences if they give any consequences at all. That can be seen under permissive teaching styles where demanding is off, but warmth is on. You don't want an educator who will not notice students struggling academically, emotionally, or behaviorally, and where they're completely detached from the classroom. That's when demanding is off and warmth is on. You want to have a teacher who is kind, positive, and supportive for their students, but also know when it's time to get serious and get things done. The example that I always think of when it comes to the teaching styles that you want to be for an effective educator is Mr. Feeney from 12. Communication is highly important to being an effective educator because you need to be able to communicate with your students, your colleagues, parents, admin, and the community. Communication can be both verbal and nonverbal. Some nonverbal cues are clapping to get attention, snapping, whistling, stomping. A music teacher that I interviewed last semester mentioned for nonverbal cues that she'll whistle in an upward pitch to get her students to stand up and then whistle in a downward pitch to get them to sit down. Some functions of talking. Content talking, which is focusing on what is being taught. Procedural talking, which is rules and routines to be successful in the classroom. And control talking is preventing or correcting behaviors. What I learned from my student teaching experience. I did my student teaching in Burke County, Georgia, and it's a fairly rural area that only had 3 elementary schools in the entire district, which funneled into one middle school, which in turn funneled into one high school. And this was a real shock for me graduating from Clayton County Public Schools, where we had 36 elementary schools, about 26, 28 middle schools, about 14, 15, 16 high schools. Building relationships with the students. As a male student teacher majoring in special education and the general, I am being placed in general curriculum classes with a special ed teacher who pushes into those classrooms and provides supports to students within those classrooms. And because I'm majoring in special education, that degree can go from kindergarten up to 12th grade. So I have to have experience in elementary, middle, and high school. Although my time at each placement was real short, about 3 days a week for 4 weeks in each placement, every teacher I was with always stressed the importance of building relationships. And I know I kind of jumped from male student teacher, and all teachers should focus on building relationships. However, I found it was important for male teachers to build relationships with students because in those younger grades, they do not have as much experience having male teachers in the schools, especially from kindergarten up to about 6th grade. And I saw that in Perth County specifically, many of the male students would just come up to me and just try and give me a fist bump and then ask me stuff about my favorite sports, what kind of car I drive, my favorite car, my dream car, music, video games, other hobbies. And with female students, they would just come up, say hi, ask about what school I go to, what I'm doing, and just want to have a conversation outside of their hobbies. And there was one student who had puppies over the weekend from my second week there going into my third. And every day that I came into school, she would try and offer me a dog like she was a car salesman. And I kind of built a relationship with that group to where I had to give a mini assessment going over AU ballots to a few students who missed class that day. And I forgot what word it was. I think it was flaunt. And the sentence went along the lines of, my dog had puppies, so I'm going to flaunt them all over the school. And then she turned around and said, I know that was directed at me, and started laughing. Even though I was in that school for such a short amount of time, I was able to build relationship connections, be able to make a joke like that and not have it come off as me being mean or disrespectful. I had one student after I taught my first lesson in middle school go home and tell his mother, who is also actually student teaching in another district. And then when she came in for his IEP meeting, she brought up how she was talking about doing her first lesson around the same time I did mine. And he started going off about how I did my lesson too and how great it was, which it really was. But to hear that some of these kids are going home telling their parents about the lesson that I did, but I thought I did a bad job at it, made it feel like bridging that gap between just coming in close to the end of the school year and trying to do something, teach them, and be seem like I've been there for a while. In the high school, it was more of trying to be relatable with them as a person and their goals, moreover, their interests and hobbies. I'm in a 12th grade econ class right now, and students are asking me about college, working, credit cards, paychecks, taxes, stuff like that, and how all that can be done at once. So how you can work while going to college and how to pay for college, stuff like that. And I can relate to them fairly easy because we aren't much different age and places in life in terms of academics and professional goals. One thing I noticed a lot in high school was students who struggled with controlling their behaviors or were easily overwhelmed were asked about teachers that they can go to and why they feel like they can go to them. And that made me also realize how important it is to build strong connections and relationships with your students. And that's another key thing to being a highly effective educator. Behaviors and how to deal with them. In the elementary school, and I would say middle school too, a lot of it was sassiness and minor talking back. There was one student in the elementary school who was EBD self-contained since kindergarten, and they tried to include him into general education during fourth grade, but he didn't really adapt to it very well. So he would throw things, yell, and then have to move. During my time there, he was, whenever he was in school, he was completely fine, didn't have any signs that he was going to be overwhelmed that day or next coming days, which it's also hard to tell. However, one week, my cooperative teacher was out sick and had a sub. One day, the sub got pulled to cover another class, and per university policy, God knows I can't have those kids in the class with a sub or a certified teacher, so they had to split up. After getting split up, about 5 minutes after that, he got removed from the class for yelling, screaming, and throwing chairs. Middle school, high school, they kind of fell into like this that same type of talking back behavior, being disrespectful. In middle school, there was one kid that had on. The teacher told him that had in his book bag. He clipped it onto a little loop on the book bag. She didn't like that, and also she was struggling with having poison ivy, having a bad reaction to the poison ivy, being out for multiple days, dealing with that, pain, irritation, rashes, having to take multiple medications for all that. So she was in a bad state, and he also struggled with things in life. So when she told him to put it in the book bag, he finally did, and then made a snarky remark about saying, "You happy now?" Which resulted in him going ISS for the day. Something similar happened in high school. A kid refused to do the work. The teacher was on the opposite side of the classroom trying to get him to do his work, but he really couldn't hear him. He responded to the teacher when she said, "Go ahead and do your work." He said, "How I couldn't hear you. How am I supposed to do something that I can't hear you?" And then he got removed from class that day too. But it was later found out that he is dealing with major health complications with his mother and having to be the one that takes care of him, or her, and his siblings during the time that other adults are having to work long hours to be able to cover for them. For classroom management, especially with special education in general, there are normally two teachers in the classroom at any given point. So everything can be easily divided and be able to get more students the help that they need and provide more accommodations to students who need it. Seating arrangements vary from class to class. I'll say about 55% of the classes I was in were in groups, and about 45% of them were rows. Each has its benefits, and it's ultimately left up to how the teacher wants to run their classroom. Finding ways to accommodate as many students while giving them the chance to choose their own seating is something that I've noticed mainly in the high school and middle school settings when it comes to behaviors and engagement with students. But ultimately, it's going to take time and practice in order to be an effective educator. If it doesn't, you feel like you're not an effective educator the first few years of teaching, don't just give up on it, but use what you had from those years, alter it, and then see how you